A 5-year-old boy, a short walk to a school bus stop, and then nothing. No screams, no struggle witnessed, no goodbye, just gone. And for 35 years, the person, or persons, responsible went to sleep every single night in a warm bed, ate breakfast every morning, watched seasons change, grew old, while Justin Lee Turner lay in a grave in South Carolina, his life stolen before he ever got the chance to live it. Before he ever lost a tooth, rode a bike without training wheels, graduated from kindergarten, or learned what it felt like to fall in love. Think about that. 35 years. That is longer than many of you watching this have been alive. Today on Vanished Women and Children, we are diving deep into one of the most haunting, heartbreaking, and infuriating cold cases in South Carolina history. A case that was solved, and then, in a single courtroom moment in the summer of 2024, collapsed entirely. A case that exposes exactly what this channel exists to talk about: how the system fails the most vulnerable among us, how a little boy can be murdered inside his own home, how evidence can sit untouched for decades, how a family can grieve for a generation without a single answer, and how justice can slip through the cracks not once, not twice, but over and over and over again. Before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome to Vanished Women and Children. This is a space where we fight for the voiceless, where we refuse to let the forgotten stay forgotten. Hit that subscribe button right now, because every single week we bring you the cases that matter, the stories that deserve to be told, and the truth that the world needs to hear. And I want to hear from you today. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. Whether you are sitting in South Carolina, where this story unfolded, whether you are across the country, or whether you are watching from the other side of the world entirely, this story belongs to all of us. Because protecting children is not a regional issue. It is not a Southern issue. It is a human issue, and every single one of us has a role to play. Now, let's go back, all the way back to the beginning.
Warning, this is a true crime story. The following program contains real events that include violence and sensitive topics. Some viewers may find certain details disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
March 3rd, 1989, Berkeley County, South Carolina. The kind of quiet, rural community where everybody knows everybody's name, where children play outside until the sun goes down, where neighbors wave from their porches on warm afternoons, and where nobody locks their doors at night because nothing bad ever happens here. That is what people say about places like this, until the day it does. It was a Friday morning, crisp, ordinary, unremarkable in every possible way. A little boy named Justin Lee Turner woke up inside the family home on Horseshoe Road, south of Monk's Corner, and started his day the way he always did. He ate breakfast, a bowl of cereal, got dressed in his school clothes, and prepared himself for another day in kindergarten at Whitesville Elementary School. He was 5 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, a wide, easy smile that people who knew him still describe decades later with a kind of tenderness that tells you everything about the impression he left on the world. Justin's routine was simple and familiar. He would leave the house, walk a short distance through their rural neighborhood to a neighbor's driveway, and wait there to catch the school bus. It was a walk he had made countless times before, a short, familiar path through a community where he was known and loved. But on the morning of March 3rd, 1989, Justin Lee Turner never made it to that bus stop. His kindergarten classmates boarded the bus that morning, settled into their seats, and looked around. Justin's spot was empty. At first, they did what children do. They assumed he was sick. They figured he'd be back by Monday. They were 5 years old. They had no framework for what was actually happening. No way of knowing that their little classmate was already beyond help. That afternoon, the school bus rolled back through the neighborhood on its return route. Justin's stepmother, Pamela Turner, was waiting at the driveway's end, just like always. The bus doors swung open. Children spilled out into the afternoon light, and Justin was not among them. A neighbor who lived close by would later recall the exact moment the alarm was raised. She remembered Pamela coming to her door, voice tight, asking if anyone had seen Justin, asking whether he had been at school. When the neighbor said she assumed he was homesick, that he hadn't been on the bus that morning either, the cold truth began to crystallize. Something was wrong. Something was deeply, fundamentally, irreversibly wrong. She called law enforcement. The search for Justin Lee Turner began. To understand this case, you have to understand who Justin Lee Turner was, not just as a victim, not just as a name on a case file, but as a person. A real, breathing, laughing, cereal-eating child who deserved a long and beautiful life. Justin was born in 1983 to his biological parents, Elaine, known more fully as Vivian Elaine Pace, and Victor Lee Turner. From the very beginning, his young life was shadowed by instability. Victor and Elaine's marriage had been troubled almost from the moment it started, marked by difficulties that neither of them could fully navigate. By the mid-1980s, the marriage had fallen apart entirely, ending in divorce. Victor secured primary custody of Justin. Elaine, heartbroken but absolutely devoted, maintained contact through weekend visits and daily phone calls. Every single day, she called to hear her son's voice. Every single day, she loved that boy with the totality of what she had. After the divorce, Victor remarried. His new wife, Pamela Turner, stepped into the role of stepmother. And so Justin found himself navigating the complicated, sometimes painful terrain that so many children in America know. A broken family, split loyalties, a home that carried undercurrents of tension beneath its surface. He hadn't chosen any of it. He was just a little boy, trying to make sense of a world that adults had already complicated for him. But by all accounts, Justin himself was warm and uncomplicated. He was friendly and gentle and easy to love. His neighbors adored him. His classmates liked him. He was the kind of child who made the people around him feel good simply by being present. He wasn't known for wandering off or getting into trouble. He wasn't the kind of kid who gave anyone reason to worry when he walked to the bus stop. He was just a little boy trying to grow up. And on March 3rd, 1989, someone took every bit of that future away from him.
5-year-old Justin's body was found in this camper shell. He was lying in a cabinet underneath a convertible bench bed.
When Justin didn't come home, the community did what communities do in moments like this. It mobilized. Neighbors put on boots and grabbed flashlights. Volunteers poured in. Law enforcement fanned out across the property and beyond. The collective heart of Berkeley County beat with desperate, urgent hope. Investigators canvassed everything. Ponds were dredged. Wooded areas were combed in deliberate grids, line by line, step by step. Open fields were searched with the kind of painstaking thoroughness that leaves no square foot unexamined. The initial theory, quickly pursued and just as quickly ruled out, was that Justin's biological mother, Elaine, might have taken him. A parental abduction was a natural first consideration in cases involving divorced parents. But Elaine and her husband, Russell Pace, were both at their workplaces when Justin vanished. There was no ambiguity, no gap in their alibis, and every call made to Elaine that day received the same anguished, pleading response. "I do not have my son. Please find my son." She didn't have him. She was miles away, sitting beside her phone, barely breathing, praying that whoever had her boy would let him go. Deputies James Gaither and Philip Mason had responded to the original call from Pamela Turner. They had conducted what was described as a thorough search of the residence and its surrounding property, including, according to Deputy Mason, the travel camper parked on the family's land on Horseshoe Road. They had found nothing. The house was searched. The outbuildings were searched. The camper was searched. The land around all of it was searched. Nothing. And then 2 days passed. 2 days of mounting fear, of sleepless nights, of a community holding its collective breath. By Sunday, March 5, 1989, 48 hours after Justin was last seen, the search had expanded to more than 100 people. Police officers, volunteers, search and rescue teams, all of them gathered on the Turner property, spreading out in organized waves across every inch of that land, working with renewed urgency because the longer a child is missing, the more the statistics work against you. And then Victor Turner walked into the travel camper, and within seconds, he backed out of it. The words he said as he emerged have haunted this case ever since, replayed in the memories of everyone who was there that day. Something's in there. Everybody stand back. Everybody stand back. Justin Lee Turner's body was found inside a storage compartment within that camper. The same camper that law enforcement had already searched. The same camper that Justin's paternal grandmother would later say she had also looked inside. Hidden, placed, in a compartment, concealed like something shameful, something disposable. He had been strangled. Ligature marks were clearly visible on his small neck, marks left by a cord or rope pulled tight, tighter, tightest. He had also been sexually assaulted. He was 5 years old. He had eaten breakfast that morning. One of his small hands, investigators noted, was clutching a clump of animal hair. And here is the detail that would define the forensic theory of this entire case. The detail that stopped investigators cold. Justin's body, his clothing, his shoes. They showed almost no outdoor debris. No dirt caked into his soles. No grass stains. No evidence that he had spent 2 days outside in the South Carolina March weather. His body was strangely, unnervingly clean in a way that made no physical sense if he had been killed somewhere outdoors and left there. Which meant investigators could only draw one conclusion. Justin was almost certainly killed indoors, inside a building, and then moved, carried, to that camper sometime after the initial searches had already been conducted. Placed there by someone who knew that camper, someone who knew the layout of the property, someone who understood exactly which compartment would be overlooked, someone who had access to that land, someone who may have had the only keys. And then there was another detail, quieter, but devastating in its implications. Victor Turner, standing at the scene on that Sunday morning before his son's body was discovered, had reportedly pulled a law enforcement official aside and asked, in a low and nervous voice, what would happen if someone within the family had been responsible for causing harm to the victim. Let that sink all the way in. Investigators did not waste time drawing their own conclusions. The evidence was pointing somewhere specific, somewhere uncomfortable, somewhere that required courage to follow. And they followed it. Victor and Pamela Turner became the primary focus almost immediately. Their accounts of the morning of March 3rd did not align with what the evidence was showing. Victor claimed he had left for his job as a pipe welder early that morning and knew nothing of what happened. Pamela said she had been in the shower when Justin left for school, that she had no reason to think anything was wrong until the afternoon bus came back without him. But there was a foundational problem with that story. Justin never boarded that bus. He never appeared at the neighbor's driveway. He never walked out of the neighborhood at all. The bus driver had no memory of him. His classmates had noticed his absence from the very first moment. He was simply never there. He was already dead. The medical examiner's findings helped build a picture of the timeline. Food in Justin's stomach, the breakfast he had eaten that morning, helped narrow the probable time of death to somewhere between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon on the day he disappeared. The absence of outdoor debris on his body told investigators he had not been outside. And the condition of his small body, cold to the touch despite relatively mild temperatures for the season, led some early investigators to theorize that his body may have been refrigerated after death. That theory was later refuted, but the chill that greeted those who found him lingered in their memories. Criminal psychology expert David A. Caldwell was brought in to consult on the case. His conclusion was unambiguous. Given the circumstances, the location of the body, the nature of the crime, and the complete absence of any evidence of an outside intruder, it was highly unlikely that a stranger had been involved in Justin's abduction, assault, murder, and concealment. The person who did this, Caldwell suggested, almost certainly knew Justin, knew the home, knew the camper, knew the property. Both Victor and Pamela were asked to submit to polygraph examinations. Both, according to investigators, failed those tests. Days after the polygraph results, the Turners retained an attorney and went completely silent. No more answers to investigators' questions. No more cooperation with the search for the truth about what happened to the little boy who had lived under their roof. Law enforcement would later describe their inability to speak with the Turners after that point as one of the defining frustrations of the entire early investigation. Witnesses began to surface with accounts that deepened the case against Pamela in particular. Several individuals told investigators that Pamela had been involved in a physical altercation with Justin during the hours before she claimed she had last seen him leave for school. Others reported that she had provided misleading information about where she had been that morning, information that did not match what other witnesses remembered. The coroner's inquest, a formal legal process unique to South Carolina, reviewed the accumulated evidence and made its recommendation. A warrant should be issued for Pamela Turner's arrest on the charge of homicide. She was taken into custody. By all witness accounts, she showed no visible emotion when the handcuffs went on. No tears, no protest, just a flat, unreadable stillness. But the case could not be made to hold. The evidence, while deeply suggestive, was not sufficient to sustain a prosecution in court. The charges against Pamela Turner were dropped. The case was then presented to a grand jury in the early 1990s. The grand jury returned no indictments, and then Victor and Pamela did the thing that would define the next 3 decades of this investigation. They packed their belongings. They left Berkeley County. They changed Pamela's name. She would now go by Megan Renee Turner. They relocated, and they never, not once, not in 30 years, reached out to the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office to ask about new leads, to offer new information, to check whether anyone had ever found justice for the little boy who had called their house home. They simply moved on. They started over. They left Justin behind. But not everyone moved on. Not everyone could. Justin's biological mother, Elaine Pace, spent 15 years in a battle that would have broken most people. She had already lost her son. She was not willing to lose the fight for him too. She made calls. She pushed for attention. She contacted anyone with any connection to the case and pleaded with them to look again, try again, care again. She raised Justin's name in every room she entered. She kept his face in front of the public because she understood, with a mother's bone-deep clarity, that cases go cold when the world stops paying attention. And she refused to let the world look away. The weekends she had once spent with Justin, the daily phone calls she had once made to hear his little voice, she replaced all of that with a different kind of ritual, the relentless, grief-soaked, exhausting work of demanding justice for the dead. In 2004, Elaine Pace was diagnosed with a terminal illness. She was dying, and as she lay in her final days, she made her husband Russell Pace look her in the eyes and promise her something. "Don't give up," she told him. "Keep fighting. Keep Justin's name alive. Keep pushing until someone is held responsible for what was done to our boy." That was one of her last requests to the man she loved. She died without ever seeing justice. She died with her son's case unsolved, with the people she believed responsible living free somewhere in South Carolina, and with the truth still locked away behind decades of procedural failure. Russell kept his promise. He carried the case forward in Elaine's name, speaking to media, supporting investigators, refusing to let the momentum die even when it felt like the whole world had moved on. Justin's cousin, Amy Parsons, had been just 8 years old when she lost her little cousin. She grew up carrying the knowledge of what had happened, the weight of what had been taken, the anger of what had never been answered. As she got older, That wait transformed into action. She created the Justice for Justin Lee Turner Facebook page, a digital space where the community could gather, where the case could stay visible, where Justin could remain a real child and not just a forgotten file number. She became the family's voice, their public face, the person who showed up and spoke out when speaking out felt impossibly hard. She didn't stop. She never stopped. And the case, slowly, painfully, across 3 decades, refused to die. In 2020, the Berkeley County Sheriff's cold case team turned their full attention back to Justin's murder. It was one of 9 cold cases being actively re-examined at that time, worked by 1 full-time investigator and 2 volunteers, people who understood that justice delayed is not the same as justice denied, and who were determined to find the difference. Sheriff Dwayne Lewis spoke openly about what had changed. Not the desire to solve the case, which had never wavered, but the tools available to pursue it. Forensic science had advanced in ways that investigators standing in that field in 1989 could never have anticipated. Evidence that had been carefully preserved for over 3 decades could now be examined with a precision and a depth that was simply not possible in the early days of the investigation. And in April of 2021, 32 years after Justin's body was discovered in that camper, that investment in patience and preservation paid off in a way nobody had dared to fully hope for. Microscopic fiber analysis, the painstaking, highly specialized science of examining fibers smaller than the human eye can perceive, comparing their composition and origin, tracing them back to their source. This is what broke the case open. Forensic scientists working with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division found that fibers recovered from inside the Turner family home could be microscopically linked to fibers found on Justin's shirt collar and in and around the ligature marks on his neck. The analysis was precise, it was specific, and it supported with scientific authority what investigators had believed from the very beginning. Justin was killed inside that house, killed indoors, by someone who lived there and then carried, deliberately, carefully, across the property and placed into that storage compartment in the camper, hidden there by someone who had keys to it and knew its layout from the inside out. Prosecutors would later point to a dog leash found in the home as the probable ligature, the instrument used to take Justin's life. Defense attorneys would contest this, arguing that a dog collar might also have been involved and that the leash alone could not definitively be proven to be the murder weapon. But the fiber evidence connecting the house to the wounds on Justin's body was the thread, pun entirely intended, that had finally pulled the case back to the surface after 30 years underwater. Sheriff Lewis spoke about the breakthrough with the quiet intensity of a man who had been waiting a long time to say what he was saying. We have a lot of forensic evidence. We got here because of new technology and forensic medicine, and we kept pushing and plugging and pulling to finally get what we needed. Pushing, plugging, pulling. 3 words that describe 30 years of work. On January 9th and 10th of 2024, nearly 35 years after a 5-year-old boy with blonde hair and a bowl of cereal in his stomach left home and never came back, Victor Lee Turner, then 69 years old, and Megan Renee Turner, then 63, were arrested at their home in Cross Hill, South Carolina. They were taken into custody in Lawrence County, transported to Berkeley County, and charged each with 1 count of murder. 35 years of waiting, and it had finally come to this. Amy Parsons, that 8-year-old girl who had grown into a fierce and tireless advocate, stood before cameras and spoke with the full force of everything she had carried since 1989. 30 years, you have enjoyed your freedom. You did not observe one day outside of those prison walls for what you did to Justin. You were supposed to take care of him, love him, and instead, you tortured, abused, and murdered him. Your child. It takes a sick individual to do what you did to that baby, and I hope you never see life outside of those prison walls. The family had waited 35 years for that moment. Elaine had waited 15 years of that before she died. And now, finally, there were arrests. There were charges. There was the sound of handcuffs and the machinery of justice beginning, at long last, to move. In February of 2024, Victor and Megan Turner appeared in court. Bond was set at $50,000 each, with conditions that required them to surrender their passports and remain within state lines. They posted bond. They were released. The community watched. The family braced themselves. And then the legal proceedings took a turn that nobody had seen coming, a turn that would unravel everything. The defense attorneys moved aggressively. They raised a new theory, that a serial killer named Richard Mark Evett may have been responsible for Justin's death, and that investigators had been so locked onto the Turners from the beginning that they had never seriously pursued other avenues. The theory was described by the judge overseeing the case as explosive evidence that warranted time for both sides to investigate fully. Prosecutors agreed to a delay. The court calendar shifted. More months passed. Through the spring of 2024, the case twisted through an increasingly complex series of motions. The defense challenged the fiber evidence. They questioned the methodology of the microscopic analysis. They disputed whether the dog leash could definitively be established as the murder weapon, arguing that the evidence was ambiguous at best. And they hammered, relentlessly, on a single undeniable fact. 35 years had passed. An entire generation had come and gone between the crime and the charges. Witnesses were gone. Memories had faded. The original investigation had been imperfect in ways that now made a fair trial almost impossible to construct. Then came June 7, 2024. Circuit Judge Roger M. Young Sr. issued his ruling from the bench, and the words he spoke changed everything permanently. The murder charges against Victor Lee Turner and Megan Renee Turner were dismissed, with prejudice. With prejudice. Two words that carry the full, crushing weight of finality in the American legal system. It is over. Permanently. Completely. The charges cannot be refiled. New evidence cannot reopen the door. The Turners cannot, under any circumstances, ever be tried for the murder of Justin Lee Turner. The case against them is closed forever. Judge Young's reasoning was thorough, sobering, and in many ways more damning of the system than of any individual. The extreme delay, 35 years between crime and charges, had caused what he termed substantial actual prejudice to the defense. More than 20 witnesses who might have been called to testify, witnesses whose accounts could have been challenged and cross-examined, were now dead or otherwise completely unavailable. The prosecution's 2024 case relied primarily on reinterpretations of evidence that had existed for decades, rather than on genuinely new discoveries that could not have been acted upon earlier. And the original investigation, the judge found, had potentially been compromised by tunnel vision. Investigators who had fixed on the Turners so early and so completely that other investigative paths may never have been properly explored. Victor and Megan Turner walked out of that courtroom as free people. They called the entire ordeal a living hell. They proclaimed their innocence to anyone who would listen. Their attorney argued that the investigation had been fundamentally flawed from the beginning, that other suspects had never been seriously considered, and that the family had been targeted and persecuted for decades based on circumstantial evidence and investigative bias. And somewhere in Berkeley County, South Carolina, in a cemetery in Harleyville, Justin Lee Turner remained in the earth, surrounded by the favorite belongings his family had placed with him at his funeral, because that was all a community could do for a murdered 5-year-old boy. Still waiting for justice that has now, legally speaking, become impossible. It is 2026 as we record this. Justin Lee Turner would be 42 years old this year. Think about who he might have become. A tradesman like his father, a teacher, a father himself. His own children now grown enough to ask him questions about the world. A man with calluses on his hands and laugh lines around his eyes, who remembered kindergarten only dimly, and who had no idea how close he had once come to never making it past it. Instead, his memory exists in photographs, in the recollections of neighbors and classmates who remember a blonde-haired boy who never showed up to school one Friday, in the mind of Russell Pace, who promised his dying wife he would not give up, in the heart of Amy Parsons, who built a Facebook page with her cousin's name on it and has tended it for years because she doesn't know what else to do with the love and the grief and the fury. The dismissal with prejudice means no charges can ever be refiled against Victor or Megan Turner for this crime. The Berkeley County Sheriff's Office has not publicly announced any new suspects or any new directions for the investigation. The fiber evidence, those microscopic threads that connected a family home to the wounds on a child's neck with such precision, sits in an archive somewhere, filed away in a case that cannot be prosecuted. The science doesn't disappear. The truth doesn't evaporate. But justice, as this case demonstrates with brutal and painful clarity, is about far more than what is true. It is about timing. It is about resources. It is about a system that moved so slowly or stopped moving entirely for so long that by the time it tried to act, the window for accountability had narrowed to nothing. This is what this channel is built on. This is the conversation we exist to have. Justin Lee Turner was a 5-year-old child. He was in the care of adults. He was dependent on the people around him in the most fundamental and complete way that a human being can be dependent on other human beings. He trusted the adults in his life the way all children must trust them, completely, without reservation, because he had no other option. And the system, from law enforcement in 1989 to prosecutors in the early 1990s, to the cold case team working decades later, to the courtroom in 2024, failed him at every turn. Not necessarily through malice, not necessarily through incompetence, but through the slow, grinding, bureaucratic reality of a justice system that was never designed to move as fast as tragedy demands. It failed him in 1989, when charges were brought and then dropped. It failed him in the early 90s when a grand jury returned no indictments. It failed him through the years when the case went cold and sat untouched while the world moved on. It failed him in 2024, when 3.5 decades of delay gave a judge no legal choice but to dismiss. A 5-year-old child was killed, strangled, sexually assaulted, hidden in a compartment on a piece of property where he lived, and no one has ever been convicted. That is not a failure of forensic science. That is not a failure of investigative effort. That is a systemic failure. A failure of prioritization and resources and urgency. Because when a child is murdered, the investigation cannot wait for technology to catch up. The case cannot be allowed to go cold for a generation while a family grieves and a killer, whoever that killer was, walks free. Justin deserved better. Elaine deserved better. Amy Parsons deserved better. Every child in every vulnerable situation in this country deserves a system that treats their lives as urgent, that allocates resources proportional to the crime, that doesn't allow cases to age out of prosecutability before they ever reach a jury. That is why we do this. That is why every case on this channel matters, not just as true crime, not just as entertainment, but as documentation, as testimony, as a record that says, we saw this, we named it, and we refuse to look away. Justin Lee Turner was laid to rest at Somerville Cemetery in Harleyville, Dorchester County, South Carolina. More than 200 people attended his funeral. 200 people who came to say goodbye to a 5-year-old boy who helped his family lower him into the ground surrounded by the things he had loved, because that was the only thing left that anyone could do for him. He was 5 years old. He ate cereal in the morning. He had blonde hair and eyes that people still remember when they talk about him, even now, almost 4 decades later. His mother called him every day because she could not imagine a day without the sound of his voice. His classmates noticed his empty seat. His community turned out in the hundreds to look for him. He was loved, he was seen, he mattered. And someone who has never faced a jury, never been convicted, never spent a single night in a cell for what was done to that child, took all of it away from him. If you know anything about this case, anything at all, any detail that has lived in the back of your mind for years because you didn't know what to do with it, please contact the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office. Please. Cases like this never truly close in the hearts of the people who love the victim. And sometimes, all it takes is one person, one phone call, one detail that someone assumed didn't matter enough to share. It matters. You matter. Justin matters. If this story moved you, and I believe it did, because you made it all the way here, which means you care, then please share this video. Put it on your social media. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Text it to a friend. Post it anywhere people will see it. The more people who know Justin's name, the more people who carry his story forward, the less chance there is that he becomes just another cold case number, just another file in a drawer, just another child the world forgot. Subscribe to Vanished Women and Children if you are not already part of this community. We are here every week, fighting for the voiceless, naming the forgotten, refusing to let the most vulnerable among us disappear without someone standing up and saying, "No, not on our watch." Not without a fight. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me what justice looks like to you in a case like this. Tell me what you think should change so that a family never has to wait 35 years again. I read every comment, every single one. This is a community, and your voice belongs in it. And to Justin Lee Turner, that sweet blonde-haired, cereal-eating, school-bound little boy who left home one Friday morning and never came back, you are not forgotten. You were never forgotten. And as long as this channel draws breath, your name will be spoken, your story will be told, and the world will be reminded that your life mattered. Rest easy, Justin. We haven't stopped fighting for you.